Hey, welcome back, Googleization Nation, to another episode of the Gordon Report. Ed, welcome back.
Well,
Happy New Year.
thank you. Yes,
We're,
welcome everyone from sunny California.
yeah, we're almost in April, and this is just because of busy schedules and things. It's almost April, and yet it's our first Gordon Report for the year. So it's good to have everybody back, and I'm sure not much has happened, has it, Ed?
Oh, I'd say it certainly a lot has happened, too much.
Right.
That's why I called the Gordon Report in January my Twilight Zone predictions for 2022, because that's where we're living in, folks. Too many things are operating, global changes within the economy, and certainly within the workforce of the U.S.
Right, and for those who do receive it, and if you don't, you can connect with me on LinkedIn and get the Never Normal news. I just released it just a few minutes before we went live, so it's up there now, and talked about you know actually the term normal, because I know people are still trying to get back to normal, or have a new normal or a next normal. And a definition of normal is a vegetative state where nothing new happens. And that is so opposite of what we exist. Alvin Toffler talked about that in 1970 with future shock. And I know you have job shock, which is kind of the next generation of that. But future
Yes.
shock really was a mental condition. It was a state. It was our emotional state, not a mental state, but an emotional state where we were just totally frazzled, stressed out, anxious, producing symptoms because of all the stress, and we're seeing a lot of that. And then on top of that, we all hope that as my mother did or does. She says, when this pandemic's over, like things will go back to normal. And yet, we have runaway inflation. We have perpetual and what's been described as maximum uncertainty. We have this, you might have heard about it, a little skirmish going on over in the Ukraine. There's and while Europe and the US is finally getting past the worst of the pandemic, we're getting back to, at least I won't say it's normal, but the ways we used to live. China's shutting down, and other countries. And now we have this new Omicron variant. So again, we're going to be living in this never normal. But what we're here to talk today about is the labor market, because it's a space you live in. You study this. I live in it. Clients are calling me all the time. So they're really, really struggling. There's controversy from wages, from equality, from compensation and benefits. We did a live stream last week with Avanti and talked about the Everywhere Workplace. I'll put the banner up there. People can definitely download this report, the Everywhere Workplace. It's crazy. 71% of respondents, 6,000 people were surveyed around the world. 71% said they would decline a promotion to have the option to work from anywhere. And 64% said they decline a raise to do that. And companies, I just read a company that said we're bringing everybody back to the office.
Well, that's true, but let's talk about what the Gordon Report is this month, the new plague, which is job vacancies. Right now, the Federation for Independent Businesses, these are small businesses, they report a record number of companies simply cannot find qualified workers, and huge numbers of people are looking and they cannot find people. Now, what does this mean? Well, this means that you folks out there in recruitment are going to have a hell of a time finding people. I talk to people here in California. They're going out to stores and they're recruiting people right off the street, whether they have any qualifications, just to fill jobs. Now, I want you to think about that for a moment. The good news is some companies have started to train again, and that's part of the solution. But the bad news is most companies aren't. Today in the Wall Street Journal, record amount of stock buybacks. No, we're not investing long term in workers, even though the labor participation rate now, one prediction is it's going to fall down to 61% by 2026. I want you to think about that. It was at 67% in 2000. Now, the reason that's happening is you have fewer and fewer young people entering the market, and you have more and more highly qualified boomers retiring. And you don't want them because they're too expensive.
Yeah.
Now, we got to change some of those policies, don't we?
Yeah, Ed, I want you to repeat those statistics because I think people just aren't familiar.
All right. Well, the labor participation rate is the number of people that can work who are working. What percentage? All right. In 2000, 67% of the population that employable was at work. Right now, it's 62.3%, and it's predicted now it will fall to 61% later in this decade.
Yeah,
Now,
and I think what's important for people to recognize, and I talk about this all the time, and I talk about the men and women, where this is not a COVID-related event. The participation rate has been declining and been ignored for 70 years, mostly because women came into the workforce. If we go back to 1950, when we were just toddlers, I was just a vision. You might have been a small toddler. So 1950.
50, I was 2 years old, yes.
Yeah, 1950, 82% of men, 4 out of 5 men, eligible men, worked. They had a job.
Right.
Now it's 62.
Right, and it's getting worse. All right. And the reason it's getting worse is because fewer and fewer people have the education and career skills to fill jobs, and most companies refuse to do entry-level job training and or keeps the skills up of the current workforce. So right now you have 2 million jobs in education and healthcare vacant right now. There are 13 million jobs across the US right now that are vacant. And if this continues, we predict by 2030 that number could go as high as 30 million. Why? Because you're going to have 79 million boomers retire. You have a tiny number of people entering the workplace. And what did Toffler in Job Shock? What was his biggest prediction? He said the biggest shock, folks, is going to be that technology is going to demand more and more education from the average worker, and the system that you are part of with education and labor unions simply is going to hold on to the 20th century. And that's what's happening. So we have a third of the workforce qualified for jobs, another third sort of, and the bottom third forget it. And now the Fed said last year, we lost about $1 trillion in profit and productivity from your companies. I say we're on track now to lose $2 trillion this year because we are not training workers and we're not better preparing the next generation for your jobs.
Right. And for jobs that don't exist yet.
Strategic planning is a joke. You have no strategic plan for the future. The bean counters in your companies are just counting on increasing profits right now. To hell with the future. That's not going to sustain this country and this job market.
Ed, and I'm going to take you back just because part of this is where people's attention is focused. I mentioned this Everywhere Workplace report, and there's a McKinsey report that came out. There's a Flex Jobs report that came out the other day. And what they stated was that although I think it was close to 73 out of 4 percent of executives said that the hybrid workplace will be part of their future. Yet 66% have no plan at all.
Right.
No plan.
Right.
How to do that. So we're talking about where people work. They can't figure out. How are they going to find people? How are they going to train people? How are they going to have the skills? Because now we've added more complexity to, if you're talking about hybrid work, we're talking about managers. Well, one is people can work from home, But then there's that, how do I stay connected to the culture? How do I stay connected to the company? How do I get recognized? How do I get promoted? How do I get how do I become part of that? And now that means that every managers, which is a key segment of our population, of the working population, management and leaders need to learn. They need to learn new skills. It's not only about training
Yes.
hourly workers how to weld
No. It's
and how
not
to
the,
nurse.
that's yeah,
We're
right.
talking about senior leadership needs to
Right.
how to
Right.
figure this out. Let me
Right.
just and let me just, before we leave that, because we want to make sure that we offer some hope, and you've been working on this plan for your lifetime. This
Long
is your
time.
life.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
So let me just put this up. Let me see if I can move this around a little bit. It's not going to work for me. Okay, we'll just keep it up here. We'll just hide ourselves. So this is from, let me get that banner out of the way. Got too many things going on here. There we go. So this banner, or this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is most recent one. And it shows the number of unemployed persons per job. Now, not to, a lot of people try to figure this out. What this means is that at the height of the pandemic, we had about 5 people for every job opening. There were about 5 unemployed people for every job opening. If we go back to 2008, the economic collapse, we had about 6.5 people, unemployed people for every job. Right before the pandemic, and people were struggling to find people. You and I have been talking about this for, you've been talking about it longer than I have, but I've been talking about it for almost 20 years. You've been even longer than that. But prior to the pandemic, in December of 2019, there was 0.8 unemployed people for every job. That's less. If every company hired every person that was available, if they could fog a mirror and they had warm blood and you hire them, they still couldn't hire enough full-time employees to fill all the open positions.
Right.
It jumped up to this 5.0, 5 employees, and now we are at a all-time record low. And when people say it's never been this bad, it's right. It's never been this bad.
Right.
0.6.
And what that translates into, people talk about retail trade and accommodations. There's 1 million in retail trade jobs, 1 million in accommodation and food services. Yeah, but there are 2 million in professional business services empty, 2 million in healthcare, 800,000 in manufacturing, almost 400,000 construction jobs. And so we're talking about 13 million vacant jobs here. And that number is going to get higher unless we take action. Now, look, I'm tired of reading the reports from McKinsey and Company, Bain, and many other think tanks and accounting firms. They all say the same thing, and that we've been doing and researching. You need public-private partnerships at the regional level. You need companies to invest in more training and education of their workers, and in some form of career education and information in community school systems in order to get the workforce you're going to need for the rest of this decade. We are not doing that. There are glimpses of it. I call them regional talent innovation networks. They exist. I'm working with them right now, but we need more of it. Go to our website, imperialcorp.com. You see on the screen. Read more about that and take a look at some of the other data there. These numbers are not Democrat or Republican numbers. These numbers are not pro-business or anti-business or pro-union or anti-union numbers. These are realistic information that Ira and I are talking to you about that we need some action on. It's going to take time, too, to rebuild this workforce. You're not going to be able to do it overnight. So you have a pool of workers out there now that have left the workforce, that are educated and are ready to be trained. There are around 30 million people out there that right now you could tap into if you once again start your training departments, your corporate university programs, and your partnerships with community colleges, technical schools, as well as career academy high schools, as well as information in elementary and secondary, so that you will have a workforce. You want 95 million vacant jobs worldwide. So you're not going to be able to import these people. In fact, the longer the decade goes, the worse it's going to get. So, if you're a recruiter, basically, many of you can screen, you can look for people. There are going to be fewer and fewer people job ready that you can just pick up and put into a job. You're going to have to develop more people. So, is this the new plague? Yes, I'm afraid it is. And, we've been talking about this for a long time as it's been shaping up. And because of short-termism in the current economic or business plan that you have, we're not ready for this. And certainly Omicron and now the war has made things worse. We want to help you make things better, but we have to persuade the people in the boardroom and on Wall Street, unless they want to see more companies go to the wall. You can buy back your stock. You can use M&A to buy your talent by snapping up smaller companies. But there is now a critical small number of individuals out there that can fill your jobs. No matter how you cut the mustard, no matter how you use these current strategies, it's not going to work.
And we've got, and we are live, and we do have a loyal listener, Jim McShane. Do you know Jim?
I know Jim McShane, yes.
Yeah, and I know he's been on in the past. So thank you, Jim, for chiming in here. You made a couple comments, and I do agree. One of them was that our population is getting smaller and smaller, and actually our population is still growing. It's going to grow slower if we don't have immigration, but our birth rate is now dipped well below the replacement rate.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. But Jim, you made a comment about MC Burning Glass, bridging the talent gap. We had on the Geek Skeezers and Googlization show. I'm going to put up that banner here just a second. There it goes. Geekskeezersgooglization.com. That's our podcast, weekly podcast. Just on February 24th, it was released. We had interviewed him about a week or so earlier. We had the new chief economist for Burning Glass Institute, and that's who's engineering this report, Gad Levinan. And Gad was on our show. The title of the podcast is called Taking a Pulse on Today's Labor Market. You can get it at geekskeezersgooglization.com, or you can get it on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, iHeart, wherever you listen to podcasts. It's up there. So that was from Gad, and we are very excited. He was giving a sneak peek into some of those things that might be coming out in that new report. So thanks for mentioning that. And then you made another comment, and these are all other effects that we're having. Childcare, yeah, it's a huge problem, and it's not. It's a matter of the cost of it's available childcare workers. More than half of all the childcare placement in low income areas, child care centers in low income were shut down and have not reopened after the pandemic, and that's where a lot of workers live. Transportation is double the cost. We filled up our tank yesterday, and it was usually about $35 or $40. Yesterday was $80. So that's huge for people who still commute and need to do that. Affordable housing, rent's atrocious. And there was a really good segment on 60 Minutes last week, I believe it was. So you can look at that up. I'm sure it's on, just do a search. So yeah, absolutely, Jim. Appreciate you contributing this. This is, it's called VUCA, and VUCA is volatile, uncertain, complex, and this is definitely a complex problem, and ambiguous. There's
Well,
no one right answer.
and let's deconstruct these three things. Leave that up for just a
Okay, all right.
second. Childcare, we have a shortage of childcare workers
Mhm.
because we are not training and educating enough childcare workers. We have a shortage in transportation right now because we have critical shortage of trained, experienced people in the transportation business, truck drivers and others. And for affordable housing, we're short 500,000 skilled plumbers, carpenters, electricians. The apprenticeship programs are way too small to handle the demand because huge numbers of boomers are now leaving those trades. So you look across the board here, and one of some of the underlying conditions that make these problems is the fact that the education critical mass that supports the entire economy, all the business sectors, it's too small. That's the part that people don't get. They think we can still muddle through with the 20th century model. And the answer is we can't. We have to now invest in our human capital for the future at all levels if companies are going to be sustainable. Without that, many businesses are going to go out of business, literally, and it's already happening.
It's an existential moment for many organizations. And Ed, I'm so glad well, Jim, thank you for bringing that up, and Ed, thank you for telling me to keep that up there, because your explanation just prompted a couple other thoughts. Affordable housing. Yes, there are buildings, and there again, there's probably enough space for everybody, but because of the demand in the areas where people work, and we can talk about migration into Arizona and Florida and Texas, and in those states, and away from the Northeast and some other states, because there's a shortage of electricians, plumbers, HVAC,
Yeah.
but carpenters. So Philadelphia, I just came across my desk yesterday. Philadelphia Business Journal, which is our region, they have a 2-week supply, lowest ever, a 2-week supply of housing inventory. So, and that means that if within 2 weeks, which is normally about 2 to 3 months of housing inventory, 2-week inventory, there's not enough homes on the market. They can't build homes fast enough for all the people who want them in the areas that need them. Part of it, the cost of labor, well, it goes down, it connects all these. You can't get people back to work if they don't have childcare. And then the childcare is super expensive when they do. Even if we had all the supplies that we need, you can't get them there because there's not enough truck drivers. So we can't get people to get the supplies to the truckers, even when you have them. And then once they unload it, and there's lumber or whatever materials are sitting in the yards, you don't have people to make homes or make furniture or make whatever needs to be made out of them to fill the affordable housing. And this isn't a pandemic blip. This is what you've written numerous books about this for 20 years, 30 years. And it's not a surprise. Look, but
my dad was a carpenter contractor. He always talked about wood butchers, people that were hired to throw up houses that ended up putting up homes that fell apart or had to be redone. How many contractors do I talk to that they hired the low-cost contractor to put the electrical work in, and the people were not qualified to do the job, and then they had to rip it all out and redo it? That's what's happening now across the country. We have contractors and others going in front of stores and hiring unqualified workers and say, oh, we'll give you OJT. We'll teach you everything you need to know to lay brick, to do tile setting, to do electrical. And they throw up a bunch of garbage houses and it results in what? It having to be redone or falling apart. Quality is not the issue. The issue is apprenticeship. Contractors do half of the apprenticeship training. Unions do the other half. The unions are not investing in apprenticeship to expand their programs. Too many contractors, not all, some are doing it, but many still refuse. We can't continue. This is just one small area. So when you get that plumbing problem, guys, and you hire a person to come in and they don't know the type of metal that will work, the different types of metal in your sink, under your sink, or in your house, they'll work together, and they do it wrong, and it results in even a worse flood. Think about this. There's no cheap way. There's no cheap way around this. We have to invest in human capital, meaning our people.
And we can go from one example to the other, just as you're talking about. Well, fortunately, we haven't had any plumbing problems recently, but we need our we need our roof replaced. And we knew that for a couple of years, but they'd come and we stretched it out a little bit. Well, the good news is we didn't have to replace it. It's 22 years old and it's still holding up pretty well. But we lost a few shingles in one of the storms a few weeks ago and figured, well, now it's time. The quote is double what it was just 2 years ago, because oil makes the asphalts, labor, construction, they're busy. To dispose of the old asphalt is more expensive. There's a whole long list. So I think the gist of this, and because you and I can talk about this all day long, and people like Jim can provide a million different examples, this is a really, really, really complex problem. And yes, we need apprenticeships, and we need to change school to do reskilling and upskilling. But as soon as I hear that, we really need to change the education system.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, the education system's is not training people for. We're not talking about turning high schools into technical schools. We need that because we still do need some people to go to college and get certified and get that proper education. But the whole education system needs to be changed.
Well, the issue is reading. If people can't read well, they can't give you health care properly in a hospital. They can't fix your plumbing. They can't fix your automobile. Half of those 13 million jobs I just talked to you about require apprenticeship, a certificate, a 2-year degree, not a 4-year degree. But the average auto mechanic needs to read at 16th grade level to fix your car. That's one reason why there's a shortage of auto technicians in dealerships. And now with electric vehicles, you're going to need fewer technicians, but they're going to have to even be better educated and trained. There's no way around this, folks.
We'd be lucky if we can get 12th grade reading level.
Well, only a third graduate from high school now with that.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, one of the most populated course in community colleges is remedial reading.
That's right.
So people graduate high school and they go to community college to continue education, and the first thing that they have to do is teach them how to read.
And many schools that are 4-year universities and colleges also have the same problem. And now they're eliminating their remedial programs because they're not getting the loan money from the government to push kids through. So they're throwing kids into courses who cannot read, cannot write properly at the right grade level or do the math. And they're pressuring professors to give them a D to pass them through. Yeah. So we're having too many graduates coming out of 4-year degree institutions who really, take a look at the surveys, what the businesses are telling you. We can't find graduates who can have a conversation, who can write a report, who have good thinking skills because their comprehension of reading material is so poor. Right. And these are college graduates. Yeah. What does this mean to American business in the long term?
Well, we're in trouble.
We're in big trouble. We
were at the bottom of our hour, and hopefully we've terrified people, but and had them glaze over. But honestly, for anyone who's looking for that next piece of technology, next piece of software, a new marketing company, different ways to hire and retain people. That's a problem. Recruiting, retention, talent management, performance management. We need it needs to be fixed. However, the real source of the problem, none of that is going to get any better if we don't look at the future labor pool, the labor market. We don't change that pipeline. We don't seriously look at the up and coming workers with schools, whether it's in high school, whether it's in college, whether it's post college, whether it's reskilling or upskilling, and currently, when our population is so limited, if there's a big movement, there's an initiative, the government pours money, there's these partnerships, we say we're going to fix the construction industry. Great, but you're pulling people from another industry.
Right.
So immigration has to be part of this.
Well, what we're really talking about is culture change and attitudes by business people, parents, educators. We need a better educated citizenry, a better educated workforce, so that we can go back to where we were in 1970, that we had the best educated and trained workforce in the world. Now we're in the fourth industrial revolution. We need to do more. We need to educate our people, our employees, and our children better. Yeah. Go to imperialcorp.com, look at our website, see what has been done, read about it, read Job Shock, our last white paper. It is happening, but it's not at scale. So next month we'll be back, and we're going to have some guests talking about solutions to this, so that you can better persuade your decision makers and your companies to do something about this before it gets even a worse critical heart attack on the economy.
Yeah, this is like one of those the Russian dolls where you keep opening one and there's another one underneath it. Jim's comment: his county school system has 70 plus openings. The Philadelphia system has 2,000 openings, common across the country. So we're talking about, well, let's change the way we educate. Well, one is let's make sure that there's a teacher in every classroom, a qualified teacher, not a body.
Who can teach.
Right, not a body who has a degree, or just a body who can fill this
because
space.
We're cutting standards now to fill those jobs, so we're throwing people in there that have no background.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've interviewed, and hopefully we'll have again, people that are working with school systems, how they're doing it differently. I know you just visited one of our friends out in LA, I believe.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah,
High School Inc., and they're doing a great job.
Right,
that is a retain. They've been at it since 1998, guys, and they're doing very well with it, and they're expanding it. But it takes hard work, and it takes investment by local business leaders.
Absolutely. And well, we're doing our best, Ed, to get the word out and to make that change. Let me go back. I switched that off too quickly. So you can get in touch with Ed at imperialcorp.com. You go up to the website. You can subscribe to the Gordon Report, which is what we're reviewing here. And you can also download Job Shock right up there. You can learn a little bit more about some of the people, including myself, that work with Ed. I also, let me put this back up here, the Everywhere Workplace Report. I'd suggest go to avanti.com/report. Not necessarily about skills and reskilling, although we're talking about cybersecurity and other things, but with the movement, how do we attract workers? Where are people going to be working? How do we need to educate people to work remotely and hybrid and collaborate digitally? Those are all skills that we're going to talk about, but what do employees want? Where can you find workers? Everywhere Workplace Report. You'll see a lot more coming out from me on that as well. And then Geek Skeezers Googleization. People like Gad Levinan from Burning Glass Institute talking about what are the trends. We're talking about last week's we talked about career transitions. We've talked about resilience. Tomorrow, this week, not tomorrow, but this week, we're going to have another great guest. He actually used to work undercover for one of the intelligence agencies in Russia. So we're gonna be talking.
And he's still alive.
And he is still alive. He's not doing that anymore. But he's got a very, very interesting perspective on leadership, what's going to be required. So can't wait to talk to him. And then, every month, Ed, you and I talk on the Gordon Report. So people stick around, and please connect with us around with both of us. But connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm a lot more. I'm very, very active for anybody who knows that they follow me, and you'll keep abreast of any interviews or articles or recommendations that we have. We will be back next month. I know we changed some of the dates, but we'll send out notices. And again, just follow us. And then, Ed, I know that you send out the newsletter and let everybody know when we're on the air again. But we will be back in April for the Gordon Report, and May and June. We've got some great guests, and we're going to be interviewing some of the people that are actually doing something about this. So again, please stay safe, everybody. We're still living in our VUCA, VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous times. That's not going to go away anytime soon. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for everyone else who's listening. Please comment. Please share this. And thanks for attending another Gordon Report. Until next time, as I say on my Geek Skeezers Googleization show, don't let the shift hit your plans.
Yeah, we'll see you next month.